Let's just get it going, hey?
Just go for it. That's recording now, so
Yeah.
all right.
Easy.
I guess our intro is going to be something we'll come up with, but we say, what are we doing, Zach? Welcome to Keep Rolling podcast, the Keep Rolling podcast.
The Keep Rolling podcast. That one sounds pretty good. It gives it an air of authority around it.
Yeah. A podcast I think we were talking about. We started an Instagram page, in the start of COVID or something. Well, it might have even been before. We haven't really kicked it off. But we're on discussion. We wanted to get into more of the BJJ grappling content again, and specific to our area, I guess, as physios. You're a brown belt under a Southern Cross Jiu-Jitsu Academy, Hodge, and I'm a blue belt. Still not much jiu-jitsu happening at the moment for me, but
blue belts of people.
We thought we'd talk all things BJJ, injury prevention, rehab, and anything else really relating to longevity on the mats. So, do you want to give us a little bit of a background of you? When did you start? When did you start BJJ?
I started jiu-jitsu in 2011, actually. So coming up on about 11 years. Training for a while. Still brown belt.
So have you always been at Southern Cross?
Always been at Southern Cross, yeah.
Did you start, was it then the old gym? Was there
old gym in the back streets of Tarrant Point. Had a little break for the HSC to get through to get into physio, and then back into it through uni.
So 2000, what did you say, 2011?
2011, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that gym is where CrossFit Cronulla went into. It's like,
I think it is, yeah.
And then that's interesting because I never knew that, and then I saw the old pictures of the gym, and someone was telling me where it was. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's where the CrossFit gym went into. And then maybe is it where the Cronulla Strength and Movement or something now? I don't know. I still think it's a gym.
I think it is. I know. I think one of the guys that used to train at our gym ended up having a gym out of there. It might have moved on by now.
Yeah, right.
They're definitely. I think it's just kind of passed through different gym owners. Yeah.
So
when did you start?
Oh, I actually started training. I was thinking about. I had this conversation with someone last time I rolled, because obviously I'm a bit sporadic at the moment. But I actually started in 2016. My first, actually, I'll take that back. My first ever introduction to jiu-jitsu was at the old TP gym. I was playing footy, and it was like 2012, and I went and had a few trial sessions at TP. I kind of didn't commit to it. I think I remember showing up, no gi with me, and there's a gi night, and just kind of going, oh man, this is a bit confronting, and like not knowing what to do. And then kind of, I think I went to 3 sessions maybe. I went, you know what, I'll leave it for another time. And then I started. I worked with one of the boys from the gym, and he was always at me to come down and train. And it took until like 2016. Then I pulled the trigger and I went, no, I'm coming. I've always wanted to do it. So I got into it, and then I've trained ever since. But I say I'm a tortoise in this race. Like, it's a marathon for me, because it's 6 years. It's 6 years since starting training, but it's a slow burn. I probably average at the moment, when I look at my sessions, I'm like probably once a week, if that. But obviously some life events in those times, so I'm happy just to be still training. I don't think I'll ever stop, but 2016 I started.
Yeah, right.
So still getting beat up by everyone, but when I go.
It's just time. It's just time on the mats.
I know, exactly. And then, all right, so you've been training jiu-jitsu since 2011, and then physio, or school and physio and then now obviously working up there at Sutherland at Flow.
Working for you for 3 or 4 years now?
Yeah, I think 2019. You started July?
Yeah, that's right. 3 years. Just had
July.
my 3rd birthday here.
Yes. So that's been good. And obviously we see with our background and kind of our network of jiu-jitsu kind of friends, we see a fair few injuries and things come through the door. And that's what gave birth originally to the idea of the Keep Rolling kind of program. Basically just taking with jiu-jitsu, obviously for me, being starting later, but obviously when you look at the history in Australia, it's not a hugely mature sport. Obviously, I think Hodge is one of the first black belts. I think you'd know that history a bit better than I in Australia. So one of the original first sort of crew to get their black belt, I think. So a relatively not a mature sport. So not much in the way of like specific like rehabilitation, injury management, research, etc., around jiu-jitsu, grappling, and obviously there's much more coming out with the trend and becoming much more popular. But originally the birth of Keep Rolling was to kind of have the pathway for people to come and sort of talk to physios that they know, actually train and have an idea about jiu-jitsu to help them get back on the mats and stay on the mats and have longevity on the mats. So you've seen a fair few, obviously, injuries in your time. Tell us about your injury history, Zach.
My injury history?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Hundreds of them.
Major, it's a minor. Give us a few breakdown you've had.
Well, let's start with the main one. I've dislocated my shoulder 5 times.
Yeah.
Which is great. Had to have a reconstruction on that, which is pretty intensive rehab process, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
About a year off the mats, ongoing rehab to kind of prevent anything from going south. That'd be the main one.
What year was that again? That was.
Surgery was 2 years ago, actually. Yeah, 2 years ago as of 2 days ago.
Was it?
3 days ago, 20th of August. I had it in 2020. So it's been an ongoing process coming back from that one. Fair bit of lost confidence after that. So a bit of time off work, bit of time off training, but appreciation for staying injury free in that time. Yeah,
it's amazing. I think with those high trauma injuries, like whether it's a knee or a shoulder, particularly, it's kind of it's tough to get back the confidence, but then also just getting back on the mats and things. It's a big task, and I think that's what's important about the ongoing kind of reduction or like they say prevention, but reduction stuff. Making sure that you're kind of doing what you need to make sure that doesn't happen again. Because obviously, the last thing that we want to see is another injury to that shoulder. If you've already dislocated, then had a reconstruction, then you just need to make sure that doesn't happen again. How did you do it?
That's exactly right.
First time.
God, how was the first one? Slipped on some sweat, had my arm, I was in bottom half guard, went to post up onto my hand, slipped on some sweat, popped my arm into the classic abduction external rotation position with another training partner coming down on me at the same time. Out it came and managed to relocate it myself. But it's pretty common, I guess, positioning for that type of injury. Pretty serious injury too.
Did you have any bone loss, any injury?
I did,
like
yeah. So, I had a heel sacs and a bony Bankart. I can't remember the exact percentage of the bone loss, but for the surgery I had, you do want to have bone loss. If you haven't had bone loss, it's not the right surgery. For the one I had, it just ends up your bone resorbs. So definitely had some bone loss, and that's what contributed to the 4 later dislocations is the loss of bony concavity and the loss of the ligamentous stability. So as much as I did try to rehab it, build up the strength and stability actively, I didn't have the passive structures there to allow me to stay anatomical.
Yeah, I guess for people listening, it's one of the things that we look at if someone dislocates, that there is what we call a Hill-Sachs lesion, which is like think of a dent on the actual ball part of the shoulder joint, or a Bankart kind of lesion, which is like an injury or a kind of bone injury sometimes. The bone and labrum and things of the actual socket. So if you have those sort of injuries concurrent with the dislocation, then it's often very hard to kind of conservatively rehab someone that's got that. You kind of never get back. You struggle to get back kind of that into those positions of or those like out here positions that kind of just tend to be the recurrent dislocators. And when it's recurrent, you kind of think, okay, I've got to do something else here. So 5 times.
5 times. Yeah. Pretty extensive. I might be butchering the statistic, but I think for every 1,000 contact hours in jiu-jitsu, you average about 9 injuries. Because of that injury, it ended up being a fair bit more for me. But I think that just speaks to the importance of prehab, strength training,
we'll probably
addressing your injuries that you have correctly.
Yeah, exactly. I think also having a kind of a base level of like standard to kind of perform. Like obviously you don't need to train and do strength training and things like if you don't want to, but I guess the actual sort of stats that we look at with sports injury and things is that I think it's a 2/3 or 66% decreased risk of sport injury just from having a decent strength program ongoing. And then if you look at the injury reduction stuff, and like we were talking about, there's with it being kind of not as much research around the injury prevention side. If you look at the sports like soccer and things like that and their injury reduction programs, there's some significant decreases made, especially with like knee traumas, 50% decreased knee trauma, like ACLs and things like that. And then across the board with soft tissue injuries, just by implementing a weekly injury kind of injury reduction warm up, like the FIFA 11 Plus or whatever it is. And then I guess that brings us on to kind of why we wanted to do this, and what we'll continue to look at is any of the research that's coming out, and then some of the stuff that helps people stay on the mats. Because as we know, you kind of a lot of people get to points in jiu-jitsu and life, family, injury there's lots of things that might keep you away from the mats, but injury is one of the big ones. It's a barrier to kind of getting people back, especially if they have a major trauma or an injury like a shoulder dislocation, a knee ligament injury, a cruciate ligament injury or something like that, which I mean pretty common from what we've seen in the clinic. I don't know about you. I've seen dislocations as a big one. There's 3 off the top of my head that I can think about. Just jiu-jitsu were shoulder dislocations, posterolateral corner injuries of late. I think over the last 2 years. I guess with the kind of rise of the leg lock game and things like that, and I think a lot of posterolateral corner injuries, LCL injuries, and stuff that have come through. And then all the other normal kind of back necks, sort of niggle, more non-traumatic stuff, but more ongoing management. Have you seen anything else that you'd add to that?
I've seen a few ACLs come through from jiu-jitsu, not even related to, you mentioned the leg lock game, just related to the positioning, the kind of demands of stand-up, passing guards. So a few ACLs. I've seen a few kind of elbow hyperextension rotations, which were, intense to get back. The athlete in particular is a pretty high performer.
Yeah.
A few necks. A few people either getting dumped on their head in sweeps, takedowns, or via their own lack of coordination and rolling. But that's definitely a fair few very interesting, I guess, presentations. It's
ankle fracture too, didn't you? It's an ankle foot. You remember?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yeah. No, we did. Yeah, judo related ankle
Yeah.
fracture. That's right. God, we've had a lot of injuries through
Well, I mean, and again, that's
jiu-jitsu, haven't we?
it's always part of injury is just part of sport, and kind of you're
Yeah,
never going to prevent it. But
that's it.
if we have the knowledge and we from our backgrounds and things, being physios, EP, and across the research and training, then at least we can disseminate some of the info that is out there to help people stay on the mats. Obviously, like I said, you never fully prevent injuries. You just can't prevent them, but you can reduce risk. And I guess that brings us on to the study that we kind of chose, or the area that we chose. We're talking about concussions and contact sports and neck related stuff. Do you want to run through kind of the studies that we're looking at?
Sure. Well, basically, we were looking at a study from 2014 from like Collins, Collins and others. Basically, what the main takeaway that I found from that one is that there's a potential reduction in concussion risk for every pound increase in neck strength. You have about a 5% reduction in concussion potentially, which if you can reduce the chances of concussion, that's always important, especially knowing that later in life, people that are having recurrent concussions are more likely to be depressed, have suicidal ideation, and have neurocognitive disorders. So, yeah, I think that was pretty interesting. If we can make a small effort to potentially reduce concussions, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think the main kind of mechanisms you'd see in grappling, jiu-jitsu, and things for concussion, head trauma?
So kind of what we touched on before, I'd say takedowns are a big one. So a few years ago, I had a training partner who got hit with a sotogari, which is it's a judo takedown. So you're going down flat onto your back, but that kind of whiplash style mechanism, head hitting the mat, he did actually end up getting a concussion. And then outside of that specifically, takedown sweeps, having your head driven into the mat, basically anything that's going to exert a high velocity force, either rotationally or just straight up and down, has the risk of developing a concussion in it.
Well, I guess such an important thing is learning how to break fall and stuff like that. And early in the piece, and you'd see people that just don't know how to, becomes a higher risk, I guess, for those concussions. And then obviously you've just got concussion is such a big topic, obviously with all the CTE stuff in the States, and then also all the protocols in the league and everything that we see now. And it's such an important one. And I think it's the light that's been shone on it, especially with the long tail effects. You need to be protecting, kind of doing everything you can to reduce the risk for people. And I guess the study that we were looking at there, and there was a review that was done, I think, more recently than the 2014 that included that study. The takeaways were, and maybe we can just link to it. It's called Injury Reduction Programs for Reducing the Incidence of Sports-Related Head and Neck Injuries, including concussion. The key points were the greater neck strength may be associated with decreased incidence of sports-related concussion. It stated that kind of evidence exists to support incorporating neck exercises in injury reduction programs for head and neck injuries in high school and adult athletes participating in contact sports. So basically, the stronger necks have the ability to influence change in the head velocity. They're noted when anticipating kind of contact. So obviously, if it's a head injury or blow to the head or neck area that you're not anticipating, you don't have the chance to kind of stiffen up and change that velocity of the head. But I mean, something as simple as adding some neck exercises into our warm-up, and we'll talk warm-ups and things down the track, may help us to see a reduced risk of a reduced kind of incidence of concussion injuries just in the everyday kind of athlete on the mats or or the competitive athlete.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. Like obviously in striking sports, they often say that the blow that knocks you out is the one you don't see coming. If you don't see it coming, you don't brace for it.
Yeah.
And so if we do translate that to what you just said, it's the things that you're not bracing for, whether that is in jiu-jitsu, judo, combat sports, whatever it is. It's when you're not anticipating it. So take a bit of time to train the rigidity, strength in your neck, and your ability to brace your neck, and you'd think it should reduce your risk of concussion. I think it makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, the takeaway then is like adding to your warm-ups, even if it's jiu-jitsu, if you're training a couple of times a week. I think there was a dose relationship in the systematic review as well. As I think it was like 3 times a week or something like that, or it might have been a limitation actually. But I think adding in some next strength exercises is something that probably doesn't get done too much, I guess. Like,
yeah.
You look at the wrestlers and things; they do a lot of the neck stuff, and obviously you kind of see them with their traps and things. They're looking like Yoel Romero and stuff like that. That's obviously what you want to do, is you just want to build the protection around the neck. So, I guess what would be your top 3 exercises?
Top 3 exercises.
Yeah, film it.
Yeah. I don't go hard out straight into the wrestling drills. Let me tell you that.
No,
it's not a good starting point.
It scares me. Obviously, that's a seasoned kind of veteran, someone that's been doing it for a long time. Even, I don't know, it just scares me seeing some of them. But where would you start?
I'd start with a TheraBand wrapped around my head. I jokingly call it the poor man's iron neck, just because that thing is very expensive. Pop a band around your head, anchored to a wall, stand a little bit away, have like a anti movement. So the band's trying to pull your head forwards, you're resisting that, and then I like to go side to side, and then do a similar thing where we go side on. Band's trying to pull me into side flexion, so pull my head across, going up and down. You can do it pretty much in any plane you want. You can stand away from it and turn your head. That's a pretty easy one. It's not many barriers setting that up. Most people have a TheraBand. If you don't, they're not exactly expensive to grab. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It's not as scary as compressing through your spine and doing headstands up and down and flipping through the mat. But it can just load up some of the neck musculature a little bit in a pretty tolerable way. So that's probably one of my go-tos for starting a bit of a neck warm up. What about you? Do you have anything that you typically will?
If I'm talking like just everyday grapplers, I start them with ISOs. I think just a simple ISO each way, even without some of the footy guys that I've done, we just do, even if it's 10-second holds or something, and you're just kind of building up kind of counter pressure. And then you're doing kind of flexion, extension, side flexion, maybe a bit of rotation stuff, and just starting there. I like the poor man's iron neck as well. And then the variations of the bridging, I think, are easier to do. Like instead of going to full kind of some of the like full on heavy weight bearing stuff, like even just on a wall, on a bench, to then on a bench, and kind of just practice those. So again, it's just the same principles apply to like trying to build neck strength to any kind of strength and conditioning program. You want some progressive load. So if you don't go to the more elite sort of stuff, the heavy stuff. Just start it easy and then progressively build. And that might mean graduating the kind of angle that you're doing those bridging exercises on. More time in the ISOs, heavier band, obviously with the band work and things like that. And then adding like your trap stuff as well. So even just some shrugs and things, I think is pretty good for all of that. If you add in some upper trap work as well, just doing some shrugs, I think a few good options anyway for some injury reduction stuff, or as just part of the strength and conditioning program.
Yeah, absolutely. Around what you just said too, like I'm often saying to my clients here, you're never going to regret going back that little bit slower.
No.
You're always going to regret going back too fast, trying too hard too soon. And that's pretty much bang on with what you were just saying around the neck, the progressively loading it. You don't want to start too hard. You want to start easier, find it easy, comfortably move yourself up.
Yeah.
You're going to get much further ahead. Even similar to what you said before about, tortoise race through jiu-jitsu. If you're there once a week, but if you're there once a week for 20, 30 odd years, you're going to get there rather than burning yourself out real quick. So better to do a little bit and over a longer period of time than go hard out and hurt yourself.
What we should do is categorize our rehab / prevention exercises into belt colors. So like white belt, like this is a white belt thing, just meaning that it's like the easy version. The blue belt's a little bit harder. The purple, I reckon that's a good idea.
That's not a bad idea.
Because then you want to like, what's the hardest exercise? It's the black belt. It's the black version. Yeah, there you go.
That's a very good idea, actually.
So let's put out our neck, our neck kind of exercises. Maybe in just a post or something, and we can link to these studies in this as well.
What are you going to call it? You're going to go down the Danaher route and systematic neck progressions, systematically building the neck?
No, I don't think so. What do you think? I don't know. Let's just put some stuff out and see what sticks.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. I think let's come up half an hour already. So let's hit we might stop it there and then we'll ask we'll see what happens. We'll put it together and then see if anyone watches it and then get some feedback. Let's obviously all we want to do is be putting out stuff that's relevant to the people that we're doing it for. So anyone that's got any questions, feel free to hit us up on social. Keep.rolling I think is the handle. We'll be looking to put out more info. We'll try to slice this up a bit, but happy to take questions or anything like that. We can make it a Q&A, whatever. We're open to figuring out what we'll do with this. But I think the main thing that we said today is let's just start putting out some good content around longevity in jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Anything to finish?
What do you reckon of the flow roll is the name then?
Flow roll. I think it
someone taking that.
I think like with flow grappling and flow. I don't know.
Keep rolling. Yeah.
Keep rolling. So why we called it keep rolling? I want to keep rolling is just to keep you on the mats, really, I think.
Yeah.
So let's
what we're talking about.
Let's pencil in the diary for next week. We'll do one a week, I reckon, and then gives us a chance to prepare a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, all right, cool.
All right, I'll stop recording. We'll see you. How do I stop recording? We'll see you next week.